I think what we really noticed is that people are just kind of mentally and emotionally worn out, or just kind of worn thin. They're just overburdened,
right?
Frustration and uncertainty, and it's taking a toll on our collective mental and emotional health and our physical health too. I know people that can get a panic attack just by watching the evening news, and I can't really blame them. It's just a steady stream of bad news, and it's taking a thing that Neuro audio technology can do, for example, is to just accelerate that process, because it can take months and months, if not years, to get the brain trained to simply get into those very deep states. And with sound, you have an almost, I'm not going to say it's a shortcut, because it's not a shortcut, but it does accelerate the process. It makes it much easier to get into those very deep states and get the benefits of meditation.
Everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Breakthrough Code. In The Breakthrough Code, I want to be exposing you to things that can help improve the quality of your life and help you create some breakthroughs. And so I invited a guest on for this session who I had interviewed in my summit, the Global Energy Healing Summit. And I was super impressed with just his knowledge and his ability to help people through a company he's affiliated with called Centerpoint Research. And so today I asked him to talk to all of us on the topic of resilience. His name is Marc Gilson, and he is the Chief Product Designer for Centerpoint, also the head of their entire coaching program. And Centerpoint is a company that's been around for a long time. Was founded by a gentleman by the name of Bill Harris. And I use their product. I actually use their Holosync product every morning to kind of get my brain in tune and to build my resilience. And Marc is a big part of that company and designing ways for people to elevate their consciousness and literally change their brain to become more resilient, to become happier, to become healthier. All these great things can happen when you start to change your brain. So, well, Marc, welcome to The Breakthrough Code. It's really good to have you here.
Well, hey, thank you. It's great to be here and see you again, Tom. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. So you probably didn't grow up thinking that you were going to get into the profession of helping people change their brains. How did this passion that you have for it come about? How did you come up with that?
No, you're right. I did not grow up anticipating that this would be the trajectory of my career, but I'm happy that it has been, that's for sure. I got into this many years ago in a roundabout way, but, my dad was a big meditator. And so he kind of taught me some principles about focus and how to use your mind. And then in the 80s, there was kind of this little burgeoning industry, you could say, really, that was kind of cropping up around neuro audio technologies, sound and light specifically, ways to alter brainwave states, things like that. And so I kind of got involved with that for a while. And then, of course, in 1996, I met the one and only Bill Harris, who was just getting Centerpoint really off the ground. Actually, he'd been kind of running the business himself by himself since '89. And then I showed up in '96. And at the time, I thought, well, I've seen binaural beat before. This Holosync stuff is nothing new. But he had a real vision, and I found out that it was different. And the more I learned about it, the more interested I became in it. And I guess the rest is history. I've been part of Centerpoint ever since, and fascinated by sound, fascinated by personal development and brain health and things of that nature.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about resilience today. Obviously, any type of meditation or most types of meditation help the brain and are really good for people to do. What is it about audio technology that can help us go even deeper and become even more resilient? Talk us through that concept, because there's lots of people that have tried meditation and for some reason or another haven't been able to really go deep enough or stick with it or get results. How can audio technology, like you use in Holosync, how can those types of things help someone become a meditator, a more successful meditator, I guess we should say.
Yeah. Well, and I think most people by now, and this didn't used to be the case, I don't think maybe 20 years ago, but most people know about the benefits of mindfulness meditation. So, you're seeing it taught in the boardrooms and professional athletes and sports teams and executives and Navy SEALs. I mean, mindfulness is now known to have tons and tons of benefits. What I think probably a lot of people realize once they say, "Oh, that's great. Let's do that. Let's do this mindfulness meditation thing," is that it's not always instant. I mean, there are some instant benefits to it from a sensory standpoint. Your mind begins to calm down a little bit and you begin to notice changes, but it's a process. And if you're really adamant about getting the long-term significant benefits of this kind of meditation, in traditional terms, you'd have to spend quite a long time doing it. So probably the main thing that neuro audio technology can do, for example, is to just accelerate that process, because it can take months and months, if not years, to get the brain trained to simply get into those very deep states. And with sound, you have an almost, I mean, I'm not going to say it's a shortcut because it's not a shortcut, but it does accelerate the process. It makes it much easier to get into those very deep states and get the benefits of meditation. Then with something like Holosync, you've got other benefits too we can talk about later, but Holosync actually pushes the nervous system to change and grow. So, people say, well, it's not traditional meditation. And it's probably not, but it's just another form of transportation. You can get from New York to LA on a bicycle or on a bus or on an airplane. They all have benefits and pros and cons maybe, but most of us who would want to take that journey would probably hop on a jet. It's the most accelerated version of that. So
yeah, and I think I use sometimes traditional meditation. I'll do like just get myself in a place, and typically when I'm using my imagination and manifesting, but also I like tones, I like sounds, I like those types of things, and it's not artificial. I mean, for years and years and years, people have been chanting or listening to chants or listening to music or waterfalls or things like that. So it is just a natural extension of what I believe has been going on for years and years and years. And now it's just a little bit more refined and scientific, but still it's tones, it's vibrations that help us get into a better state. So
well, I mean, you can trace all that back, like you said, I mean, drumming, one of the first believed uses for drumming, for rhythm, was to induce altered states, whether for shamanic purposes or ritualistic purposes or what have you. And so, you're right. I mean, this is really just kind of a modern take on that same process.
Yeah, sure. And chanting and all sorts of things that we used in the past. So talk about resilience. What do we mean when we're talking about resilience? Take us through what that is. And
it is a hot topic. And there's a reason why. I was thinking about this before our call, and one of the things I know you've done in your work is really help people get unstuck in their lives. And I think that's really, I see that as part of our mission here too at Centerwood, a big part of it, because life can be sticky, right? I mean, there's, you can get stuck in bad relationships or bad jobs or whatever. And a lot of people get stuck with unhealed trauma or other, circumstances that have held them back. And I think that feeling of stuckness is really kind of peaking today. That saying, like, may you live in interesting times. And I think we do. I think most of us would agree that we do. And so one of my jobs here at Centerpoint, excuse me, is to read and research these various trends, or what we call social mood. Now, for me, that's a lot of reading and listening to experts and paying attention and to what seems to be happening. But I'll tell you that the most compelling source of information about social mood for me is kind of in my own backyard, because people know Centerpoint. Sometimes they'll know Bill Harris, excuse me, and of course they'll know a little bit about Holosync. But a lot of people also know us for our coaching. Which is something Bill really felt strongly about. We call it accelerated results coaching. And so as you can imagine, we get lots and lots of calls and emails from clients who are looking for coaching and support from our team. And so for me, having been here for 27 years, what's interesting is to see how these trends change,
Mhm.
and the different challenges that people face. So when you look back over the past few years, it's been especially interesting because of the kinds of challenges. I mean, everybody's got their own problems, but you've got the pandemic and you've got the economy and you've got the environment and this kind of cultural tension and this sort of
Right.
political strife that's on everybody's mind. And I think what we really noticed is that people are just kind of mentally and emotionally worn out,
Mm.
or
Okay.
just kind of worn thin. They're just
Yeah.
overburdened,
Right.
frustration and uncertainty, and it's taking a toll on our collective mental and emotional health and our
Yeah.
physical health
Yeah. Yeah.
too. I
Mm.
mean, I know people that can get a panic attack just by watching the evening news, and I can't really blame them. It's just a
Yeah.
steady stream of bad news, and it's taking a toll.
Yeah.
So, in fact, the Germans have a great word. I don't know if you've heard this or not. It's kind of making it into the mainstream. I'll probably botch it when I try to pronounce it, but it's called Weltschmerz,
Haven't heard that.
which it roughly translates into world weariness, which I think is just a
Ah,
great term. The sense of sadness, really, or
yeah.
fatigue about the state of the world. And I had a client the other day say, it feels like the whole world is going through kind of an existential crisis, and maybe it's more of an existential weariness, but
Yeah.
that's what people are telling us. So um, I mean, you can work on your own problems in your own life, but it's kind of hard to solve the problems of the world at large. That's not something any one person can do. And so, and
Yeah.
I don't want to.
People are,
Yeah,
I do agree with you. I think a lot of people are feeling that way. And when the brain gets stuck in a pattern like that, if they don't do anything proactively, it will continue they will continue to feel weary. They will continue to feel out of touch. Their health, mental and physical health, will suffer. What is the concept of resilience, though? Because resilience is, in my mind, it's like resilience in the body. You get a cut, it heals, right? It's
yeah,
resilient. It can come back.
yeah,
How do we create that resilience in our minds and our brains so that
yeah,
we can face whatever gets thrown at us and be able to come back from it, right?
yeah,
Not get knocked down and stay there for the next 3 years.
yeah. And I think too, a lot of us were raised with an idea about resilience that equates to toughness,
Mm.
and nothing wrong with toughness.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to be tough in this world, but we're really learning about the value of sort of a different kind of resilience. It's a more plastic, like you said, sort of bouncing back. In fact, I had a
Yeah.
client tell me this. I don't know how people will feel about this analogy, but I really liked it. I was talking to her about resilience and this adaptability, this flexibility. And she goes, "Oh, so you don't mean John Wayne resilience, you mean Simone Biles resilience."
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
said, yeah, flexible, adaptable,
Yeah.
agile,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Huh.
able to kind of go with the flow to us. And it's not just about muscling your way through tough times.
Right.
And I think a lot of us were sort of raised to just kind of be tough and grit your teeth and bear it. And I think there's moments in life where that's appropriate. But I also think if that becomes a chronic way of living, it's going to have some dire ramifications. And I talk to people all the time who've done that all their lives, and they're realizing, okay, I've weathered a lot of storms, but I'm not happy. And
Yeah. Well, there's a
so,
tension to it too. Like, that was
yeah,
the way that I grew up was, grit your teeth and bear it and get through. But over the years, I found, man, and I didn't even realize it, but when I became more aware of my body and could feel more, it's like, yeah, I got some tension. Like, I didn't even notice I was carrying all this tension. And then after you do this long enough, actually, you do become less resilient because
yeah,
the mind is actually weakening because there's never off time, right?
yeah,
And so that's why I got, I had a chronic fatigue in 2015, and a lot of it was because I had used the old way of resilience, just like muscling through.
Yeah.
And finally, I learned that is not the most elegant way or the most healthy way to get through life. There's actually a better way. And it's almost like, yin and yang, right? If you're just always using that yang energy, the male energy, which I was taught to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
It makes some good progress, but eventually you'll wear down.
Yeah.
And I got knocked literally to my knees and had to come back from that. And now I approach life in a much more, I guess, elegant, eloquent way. But I had to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
And you're teaching people how to do it like now.
Well, and I'm learning it myself. I mean, I'm still practicing this. I don't know that you kind of learn it and then you get it down and then you kind of go about your business. I think this is an ongoing thing because I don't know about you, but for me, the older I get, uh, different kinds of challenges come up, right?
Yeah.
I don't have the same set of challenges I had when I was 25.
Yeah.
They're different now. And sometimes it requires a different skill set to respond to that, a different kind of resilience or just resilience applied in a different way. Sometimes you just have to kind of get out of the way of life and let things unfold, knowing that you can't control every little nuance of what happens.
Yeah.
And that too is a form of resilience. So it's not always withstanding force or kind of brute muscling your way through an experience or something like that. Sometimes it's just being able to sit in that state of peace and what I call spiritual equilibrium, where maybe things aren't fantastic and blissful, but you're in kind of that neutral state where you're okay, you're stable,
Right.
you're present in your life, and it's a much more powerful way to live than I think people realize. But once you get a taste of it, that's when this is where it's at, being in the moment, being present to the good, the bad, the ugly.
Yeah.
And so, but again, I mean, resilience is something that I think people they want, but there's not really a button out there that you can necessarily press to get it. But mindfulness meditation and in our case, pushing the brain with something like Holosync or just any kind of mindfulness practice, that is the closest thing to a button you can push to improve your resilience.
Yeah, well, because it's developing it. It's strengthening your brain, your mind, so that when the thing shows up, you're not freaking out. You can handle it in a way that you're okay. And even if it's tough,
Yeah.
you typically will be more resourceful and creative and have a higher likelihood of being able to find a way through it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the brain, because I know you guys have done a ton of research on the brain.
Yeah.
So when somebody practices meditation over time, what is happening in the brain? What are they doing within the brain to start to change it and mold it and make it more resilient? Can you talk through that?
Yeah, sure. That's there's so many ways to answer that. I'll start with this. I think one of the things lately that is big in the scientific community. And again, I'm not a neuroscientist, but I read this stuff incessantly. But the concept of brain coherence, and that's what's really lapsing. I don't know if there's a book out by Johan Hari called Still in Focus, great book. But lots of books lately are coming out about this notion that we have this mental fogginess, this monkey mind. Our attention spans aren't what they used to be. We want everything in a little tweet or something, right? I mean, we just need a little soundbite and then we react to it. And then we get another one and we react to that. And so when you meditate, it really turns off that limbic response of like, let's get the next dopamine hit, whether it's happiness or anger or frustration or outrage, and it says, let's be patient and let's digest more information over a longer period of time rather than, an overabundance of information right this very minute. Scientists are telling us stress and aging. These are the things that we need to mitigate. Aging by itself is not a problem, but when it's combined with stress, then it gets to be that ugly kind of aging where your memories, your cortisol levels are sky high. So you asked about meditation, and what it does, it reduces cortisol levels, for example. It increases synchronous neuroelectrical activity between the two sides of the brain. Okay, so that increases that coherence that we were talking about, whole brain thinking.
Mm-hmm.
It increases the neuroplasticity, the ability of the brain to adapt to changing circumstances and the highs and lows
Mm-hmm.
that we sometimes see with stress. Um, it helps the brain retain its plasticity in terms of actual neuronal aging.
Mm-hmm.
It can help reduce the buildup of certain kinds of brain plaques, beta amyloid plaques, for example, that are believed to contribute to conditions like Alzheimer's and other kinds of neurodegenerative
Mm-hmm.
problems. So, I mean, there's a long list of, the hippocampus is involved, the amygdala, how we form memories, of course, how we sleep, how we communicate. All of these things improve once there's this increase of brain coherence.
Yeah.
And meaning all these systems within the brain are working in sync and together, and they're all on the same team. They're not battling, like sometimes happens when we're under a lot of stress.
Yeah. That's amazing. And for people that haven't meditated, it's something that once you get into it and you commit to it, can be super life-changing. And if you are already a meditator and you know the benefits, keep doing it. Now, when we add sound and tones and music to our meditation experience, how does that amplify, or you say, I think you said, maybe speed up the process? Like, what does that do to the brain when it's getting that input?
Yeah, so you're asking specifically about holosync and sound in general?
Yeah, we can talk about Holosync,
Yeah,
and but I think and there's definitely some nuances that are unique to your product,
sure.
but any, like somebody even chanting Om,
Yeah.
or listening to a chant like that, like how is that more helpful than maybe potentially just sitting in silence? Not that there's anything wrong with that either.
Yeah. Well, I'm not there. There are people who actually practice what's called vibratory medicine, and those are the experts in that part of this field. But I will tell you that one of the main concepts, of course, and this is not new. In fact, this is ancient
Mm-hmm.
wisdom, is that everything has a resonating frequency, including your
Yeah.
body and every individual part of your body and your brain. And by understanding and syncing up and harmonizing with those core frequencies, those vibrating, those vibrations, um, you can actually stimulate those centers. So we all know about the chakras and that those can be stimulated in different ways, including with sound. There are specific frequencies that are associated with each one of those. So healing with sound is not a new concept at all. Um, but I think that the concept of vibration as a whole is something, and I've said this before. I really believe this. In the next 5 or 10 years, you're going to see more and more
Mm-hmm.
sound therapies kind of accepted by, I guess, what you call mainstream medicine. But there's different ways of applying it. But I think that's the future, and light too. We're seeing red light therapy, things like that.
Yeah.
So it's an exciting thing, because anytime you can heal the body or improve functioning, improve the brain, and you're not taking pills.
Yeah.
I'm not anti-pill, but there's plenty of those out there,
Right.
enough as we know. And you're not having to do something wild and, climb a mountain high in Tibet, and live for 15 years in a cave or something. You're just working with sound. You're just working with your things that your body and your brain naturally respond to. I think it's really, really powerful. So, but
Yeah.
the brain itself, it's a neuroelectrical organ. People sometimes forget that. So, it functions by, these very tiny chemical microelectrical charges that fire off in our brains all the time. And so, the rate at which these are firing can tell us a lot about the state somebody is in, on a moment by moment basis. So, for example, if we see neuroelectrical impulses firing very slowly, maybe around like 3 cycles per second or 3 hertz, then we know that brain is in a very deep state of consciousness, and that person's quite likely either sleeping or in a very deep state of meditation. So for binaural beat entrainment, that is a method of altering those brainwave states and taking the brain to or through any given state. So we can escalate or elevate attention, we can reduce it, we can induce sleep. We can get into a very focused flow state, in a mid-alpha state. Um, there's almost no end to the application there. And then, we could talk more about what Holosync does uniquely.
Yeah.
But it's a very powerful form of technology. It's proven.
Yeah.
And man, I mean, I've always been kind of an evangelist for it. I think everybody should be doing some kind of sound entrainment therapy.
Yeah. And so what, and I want to go over brainwave states a little bit, and then we'll talk about the Holosync technology, but talk about how entrainment works. What's going on? You're listening to tones in both ears. How does it help the brain move to a different brainwave state? What is going on?
Okay. Sure. So, binaural beat entrainment, as I said, we can change the firings of the neurons in the brain. So we can move through these different states from sleep, calmness, alertness, all of that. We can trigger certain kinds of neurochemical changes. So we can increase serotonin, reduce cortisol levels. The way you'd actually do it, let's just pick a state, because we know right now we're in beta. Okay. So beta is a state of normal wakeful attention. Then there's alpha that runs between about 8 and 12 cycles per second. So that means there's about 8 to 12 neuroelectrical impulses firing in the brain every second.
Slower than beta, right?
Slower than beta.
Slowing down a little bit, yeah.
Yep, we're going down the scale. And then we get into theta, which is like a dream state, kind of that state between deep sleep and wakefulness. And then, of course, we have delta, which is typically associated with deep sleep. Now, it's not quite fair to just kind of say, well, delta's deep sleep, beta's wakefulness, because there's all kinds of variations within those states, but generally that's what that is. And then, by the way, above, I sometimes neglect, you said it, gamma, which is a very interesting state. But I won't get sidetracked. I'll stay on your question. So let's just say we wanted to get into an alpha state. We want to focus, want to improve our memory. Maybe we're studying for a big test or something, or we're reading a complicated book. So we're talking about altering our brain waves into something between about 8 and 12 cycles per second. So we can do it with just a couple tones. So each hemisphere of the brain has its own listening areas and processes sound independently of the other one. So if we feed a tone of, let's say, 220 hertz into the right ear, and then we take a different tone of, let's say, 230 hertz into the left ear, the brain does something really pretty cool. It falls into lockstep with those tones. It synthesizes those tones, and it creates a third tone, or what we call a beat frequency. It's kind of a phantom tone, and it exists only in the brain stem, actually, very deep. And then it propagates throughout various brain regions as it builds. And so that beat, or that phantom tone, is just simply based on the difference of those two tones that we've been listening to. We call them carrier frequency. So the difference between 220 and 230 is 10, of course. And if you remember that alpha range, we said it's from 8 to 12 cycles per second. So that 10 hertz, that beat frequency, is right where we have targeted. We've achieved an alpha state. So alpha is associated with that enhanced focus, calm state of attention, higher retention and recall. So that's kind of an oversimplification of it, but that's basically how it works.
So you have two tones, and then literally the brain is going to go to that difference, which in your case is 10 cycles per second, which would be in an alpha state, versus a beta state, which would be cycling faster than that. So it can calm the brain down literally by playing two tones. And then the brain will just do it on itself. Will go to the difference between the two tones, right? Which was in that case.
Precisely. And I mean, that's what makes it such an effective. I mean, it's a powerful meditation tool, but it's not just a meditation tool, right? And when this stuff first came out, the scientific community went, "Oh, that's really cool." But it was really the consciousness exploration people, the people who'd been already experimenting with who knows what, right, to alter brainwave states, but also to improve their sleep, to induce sleep, to have lucid dreams, or to combat jet lag, right, or to amp up their focus and attention or their energy. So there's all kinds of applications for this, but it all kind of stems from this one concept of altering brainwave states just using sound.
And so after you've done it for a while, does the brain then learn how to, on its own, go down to the desired state when necessary?
That part of it, yes. There's another part we haven't touched on yet, but yes, you can absolutely train the brain to get better And that's part of the resilience. What, really the brain version of resilience is truly more neuroplasticity, right?
Yeah.
So it improves the brain's ability to move to or through these different brainwave states. And if you're wondering, how that has a practical application, I mean, imagine those situations where, you're working away or something, and suddenly something crops up that you hadn't anticipated, that maybe a minor crisis or something to deal with.
Yeah.
And your brain automatically goes, okay, I know what to do here, right? So it makes the neurochemical adjustments, it makes the neuroelectrical adjustments, and your responsiveness is just clearer, and you're making better decisions, and you're not feeling like, oh, that really threw me out of my saddle, and I'm really having a hard time coping with this, and kind of freaking out.
So why would we want to go into an alpha state to be more creative, also it's a good feeling state, right? It's a nice,
it is,
feels good to be in it. It's relaxing. It gives the body a little bit of a break, right? The mind a little bit of a break so we can relax and recover. Why do we want to go into, because with your technologies, you're putting people into different states and, driving the brain really to get there. Why would we want to go into a theta state?
Well, for one thing, more theta activity in the brain is associated with better creative problem solving skills.
Okay.
Which I don't know anybody who couldn't use that.
Sure.
Basically just being able to regulate emotions more effectively. When you're in theta, there's a calming of activity in the limbic system. The limbic system is part of our fight or flight response. And if you feel like a lot of people do these days, you're always on red alert, right? That's your limbic system going, okay, I got to watch out for this, I got to watch out for that. There's that hypervigilance. So theta begins to calm activity in that limbic system, while also increasing activity in the prefrontal cortex, which is that part of your brain you really want in the driver's seat when it comes to especially long-term planning and decision making. Theta is a wonderful state. It's probably the state most commonly associated with what's considered deep meditation.
Okay. Do you ever want to go, like, through listening to tones and sounds into a delta state, or is that too deep? That's to put yourself to sleep, or also meditate?
I'm glad you kind of put it that way, because I think a lot of people think that. We do a ton of work in delta, and that's because those delta waves are nice and slow and even. Delta is not just a sleep state. It's actually a trance-like state. It's the state where it's kind of called like the mind awake, body asleep. It's possible to maintain consciousness all the way into various states of delta. So this is where the real deep integration stuff happens. This is where we can cause the system to release a lot of old unresolved mental and emotional stuff, right? This is where the body begins to kind of repair itself, and your sodium, potassium levels in your brain, all that stuff kind of get reset. The janitorial system of your brain comes and sweeps away those nasty brain protein plaques and stuff that build up when we've had a long, stressful day. So we really want a lot of that low theta and into delta. That's good stuff. And one of the problems, of course, as you probably can see, is that with so many people suffering from sleeping problems, not too many of us get enough time in that state. We kind of touch on it, we kind of dip our toes in it at night if we're lucky. But we don't really get enough of that kind of deep stage 4 sleep that's really rejuvenating, and that's why so many of us wake up not feeling very rested, even though we've had our eyes closed, snoring away all night.
Yeah. And then what about gamma? Why would we're in beta pretty easily, but why would we want to go to gamma? What are the benefits of that?
Well, and probably 25 years ago, nobody wanted to go to gamma. I mean, because gamma you're right, and we're in beta. Why would we want to elevate those brainwave patterns into something even more, presumably tense and stressful? I could talk for a long time on gamma, but I can kind of sum it up this way. A lot of the most exciting research involving brainwave states is around gamma. You and I have talked about this before. Gamma is now kind of being implicated in a possible ability to improve that beta amyloid buildup that we talked about. There are a lot of presumed reasons why someone would, face something like Alzheimer's. There's a lot of other conditions, I guess I'm trying to say, that can cause that. But slowing down brainwave activity happens when there's this beta amyloid, this plaque builds up within the brain. It's a substance. It's not unlike the plaque that you can get on your teeth that's sticky and gross. And it slows down those neuroelectrical impulses in the brain. And so this is why people's memories fail. This is why they can't quite recall the name of somebody that maybe they've known all their lives.
Yeah.
So with gamma, some research out of MIT over the past, I think, can't remember what year this was, but within the past 6-7 years, has really it's wild. I mean, you can kind of look this up for yourself, but they've used gamma both in the form of sound at 40 hertz and light waves as well. And they just on mice who had Alzheimer's or Alzheimer's-like symptoms, that buildup of plaque, and it reduced that plaque by something like 35% or something, which is significantly, I mean, the best Alzheimer's drugs that are out there right now, I think, are capable of reducing it by around maybe 5 or 6%. Now, this hasn't been tested on humans, but they do have approval to do clinical studies on that. So this is exciting. I mean, so that's just one cool thing about gamma.
Yeah.
The other one, which won't take me quite nearly as long to explain, it's a state of happiness. They did a study at the Menninger Foundation. They hooked up these Buddhist monks who are practicing a form of meditation called the Metta Bhavana, which is a meditation about loving kindness, extending loving kindness to yourself, to others near you, and to the world, to the universe. And normally you put somebody on an EEG machine measuring their brainwave activity, and you see it go like this. It goes down, 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 down. Well, these guys were seeing these spikes into gamma out of beta. So they were ramping up. And at the peak of those gamma spikes was when they reported the feelings of the most happiness. Their serotonin was high. They felt great. They looked great from a neurochemical standpoint. And so gamma is really kind of a feel-good brainwave state if you're, if you listen to it consistently.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for enlightening us on the brainwave states. And so now you have a technology called Holosync, and it's beats, but it's a very unique way of using it. And you've got different products. Some are just on, they're called awakening, where you're really awakening your brain and going deeper and deeper and deeper into meditations. But you've got programs that help release trauma. You've got programs that help with pain. Take us through what Holosync is doing when someone puts on a headset and listens to it. What's going on?
Yeah. What makes it different, and the reason that it creates these more significant changes than most people who've used other kinds of binaural beat entrainment are used to, really has a lot to do with the way we use the carrier frequencies. And I can take you back to that example with the alpha. We talked about the 220 hertz and the 230 hertz. Well, one of the things that Bill really was among the first to discover was that those carrier frequencies matter. There's a lot of attention on what brainwave state, is it alpha, is it theta, is it delta? But the other factor that really determines the potency of what the kind of stimulus that we're feeding the brain has a lot to do with those carriers. And generally, not every time, but the lower those carriers go, the greater that standing wave. I'm sort of drawing it in the air here, but you've seen a waveform, and that wave gets, the amplitude goes up. That waves with higher amplitudes tend to have more energy in them, and that's what we see as we lower those carriers. So what that means,
when you say lower the carrier, what do you mean?
So instead of 220, let's say we still wanted to go to alpha. Remember that 10 hertz?
Yeah.
And let's say you were the one listening to it, and you said, well, Mark, this is great, but I want something that really pushes me a little bit. I want something that really creates some change, not just for the half hour I'm listening.
Yeah. So
what I might do is I'll say, okay, Tom, try this. And I might take those 220 and 230 tones away and replace them. Let's just say, 180 and 190. Okay. Or let's just say 172 and, 182. As long as the difference is 10, you're still going to go to alpha.
Yeah.
But those carriers are now lower, and that increases the amount of energy within the wave that's in the brainstem itself It's like if I do a curl with a dumbbell, um, 5 times. If I do that with 5 pounds, that's one thing. If I do that with 20 pounds, that creates a much greater challenge for my muscles. It creates more
Yeah.
fluctuation in my muscles, and it's going to cause some more significant change if I'm able to do that consistently.
So the
So
brain's
that's in
getting
a
more of a workout.
exactly, that's
Yeah.
exactly what it is. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's neural driving is the term that we have for it.
Mhm.
Saturating the nervous system, giving the brain more than it's used to handling to cause it to. And by the way, this isn't this is how we all grew. Our brains are developing from before we're born. And then, everybody says, well, the brain develops until you're about 18 or it's fully developed at 22 or whatever. Well, one question you can ask yourself is, why does it stop? I
Mhm.
mean, part of it stops because of, natural biological, physiological, developmental functions that are completed. But there's no reason why we can't continue to push the brain in the same way, giving it more stimulus than it's used to handling, because the brain loves to take chaos and organize it. It's really good at that.
Yeah.
The problem is that the chaos we're used to getting is stuff we can't, we don't have a lot of control over, so it
Yeah.
tends to overwhelm us. But if you can provide the brain with a positive form of stressor, which there's a term for called eustress, the brain goes, oh, great, let's take this and combine this and try it this way and try it that way. And it becomes, as we talked about, more resilient. There's more stamina. There's more of that brain coherence. There's more connectivity between the two sides of the brain, more whole brain thinking, more focus, concentration. I mean, I could go on, but all that dovetails from this neural driving effect, giving the brain enough stimulus to cause the brain to reorganize, as Bill used to say, who developed this technology,
Mhm.
reorganize at progressively higher and higher levels of functioning.
And when that happens, then even traumas can be released and
Yeah.
tension and pain, because I know you have programs for all these things.
We've worked extensively the past year with trauma because it's such a pervasive challenge for so many people, and it comes in so many different forms. In fact, we do a monthly meeting with our clients who are working with our trauma related soundtracks to help them with that, and so we're always learning more and more. But so many people, Tom, I mean, it's sad to me. I mean, I get a little worked up over it because so many people I talk to in their 50s, 60s, and they've gone through therapy. I'm a big believer in therapy,
Mhm.
but they have been kind of led to believe, or they've ended up in a situation where they just don't think it's possible to heal it.
Yeah.
It's part of them as far as they're concerned. It's in their
Yeah.
DNA now.
Yeah.
And when they start working with Holosync, which all it requires them to do is sit and listen to it, and they get out of the way of the process and they start tuning into the fact that, wow, sure, I had this memory come up from the past, but it
Mhm.
didn't throw me off my saddle. It didn't affect me the same way. It didn't cause me to break down into tears or become angry or withdrawn.
Yeah.
That gives them some hope. And they go, maybe I can handle this. Maybe I can heal. Maybe this doesn't have to haunt me the rest of my life. And my only wish is that they'd, started doing this kind of thing years before.
Sure. Now, in some of your more advanced programs, you can actually do your own affirmations that are
Yeah.
then added to the track. How does the Holosync technology help those affirmations become even more powerful?
Yeah, that's a great question, because affirmations, self-talk matters. I'm really learning more and more. I thought I knew a lot about it. I'm learning more and more about that every day. The power of a thought, the power of what you say to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so with the Holosync Solution Program, which is our classic, Bill's master program that uses a lot of that neural driving effect that we've been talking about, when you get into those deeper levels, pretty heavy duty stuff, but then you get to add an affirmation script, not just one that you pick off, the internet, but actually one you record in your own voice. And we go to all that trouble because your own voice, even, a lot of people don't like the sound of their own voice. I'm not a big fan of my voice either, but, it's the voice that's most familiar to
Yeah.
you, to your
Yeah.
unconscious. And you get to pick where you want to focus your attention. And then we put that into our own proprietary encrypted encoding method called autophonics, which I can get into in more detail if you want to, but that gets embedded along with Holosync. And you asked how Holosync helps. I mean, you're getting into those very, very deep states. The affirmations can sort of bypass the filters of the conscious mind. You know, the ones that if I say, Tom, you're a wonderful guy in a party, you say, oh, I'm not that great. You know, what is he talking about?
Yeah.
We don't have to deal with that security guard, right? We kind of sneak around and get those affirmations anchored in the unconscious, where over time, not overnight, but over time, they begin to manifest in your conscious thoughts and your behaviors and really create a significant shift. So it's very powerful. Combination of both the affirmations and Holosync is just it's a great, 1-2 punch.
Awesome. I love it. And so how do people find Holosync? I think you mentioned a 5-day challenge. What are some ways they can engage with this great technology that you've created?
Okay, the 5-day challenge. I'm glad you brought it up because this, I hope everybody listening will find this appealing. We've been doing this for years. The 5-day challenge is a way to try Holosync for free, basically. But it's not just a little, 2-minute sample thing. So you just sign up, and then every day for 5 days, there's a short video. And then you grab your earbuds and you sit back and you listen. There's a 14-minute session that you do every day, and that's it. Super easy. And it's really sort of a trial or sample. But I'm telling you one thing, this has been blowing me away. Even just 5 days, people are getting some amazing results. We get amazing feedback. I will tell you, some of the comments we get are so remarkable. I mean, I'm not even sure we should publish them because they almost don't look real, but people experience significant shifts and improvements. They're reporting experiences that are associated with improvement in that resilience, that brain coherence, in just, 2 or 3 sessions, which I think is remarkable.
So where do people go to sign up for this?
So for people listening, we actually have a special page set up just for them. So I have a link for you, and all you have to do is go to myholosync.com/TomM. So I'll spell that out.
Okay, cool. I didn't even know you were going to do that, so that's cool.
Oh yeah.
So we're all set up. Though. Let's spell it out. So
okay, let's do it. Yep. So it's myholosync.com/Tom, TOMM. So for Tom McCarthy, so TOMM. So myholosync.com/TomM will get you to the page with more information about our famous 5-day challenge. And
that's free, completely
it's free. Absolutely 100% free. Good. Try it for yourself. I mean, we could spend another hour talking about Holosync, but I always, I'm an experience first kind of person. And so even if you're not sure what in the world this stuff is, or I haven't done a great job explaining it, give it a try and tell us what you think. We'd love to hear your feedback.
Yeah, it's something I use and I love it. Recommended it to other people. So I hope everybody will try it. And Marc, thank you so much for being on with us. It's really great to have you. You're doing such great work, and you and your company, it's a big company. And I think you've had over 1 million people go through Holosync. So this has really changed a lot of different brains around the world. But keep doing what you're doing. And thank you so much for being on with us.
Absolutely, Tom. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you as always.